Please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Anne Marie Buerkle.
Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon. It is such an honor and a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with all of you this afternoon regarding what the conservative women's role should be, especially in light of 2012. I am one of you, a conservative woman, unashamedly pro-life, very much in favor of the Second Amendment. As was my introduction, I believe that low taxes and less government is the way back to economic recovery. I believe that we as individuals are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the reason that our government exists is to preserve and protect those rights for us. So I'm proud to be here, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to speak with all of you. As was mentioned, my grandparents came here from Italy. And they came here, and when you think about this, my daughter and I were on the Ellis Island website this past weekend. When you think about what people gave up to come to this country, they arrived at Ellis Island. We looked up my mother's father. He was 15 years old. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have credit cards. They probably didn't have American money in their pocket, and they didn't speak English. Yet they came here because in their hearts and in their minds, they believed that the United States of America offered them an opportunity that wasn't available anywhere else on earth. So they gave up everything and they came to this country. And because they knew that this country had this American dream. And when I think about being in Congress, I think that my being in Congress embodies the American dream. If you think about, in 1969, I graduated from high school. And back then, I went to a small Catholic high school in a small town. And when you went in to talk with the sister who was the guidance counselor, your options were fairly limited. You could go into the convent. That was always number one. You could become a secretary. There was a lot of office, courses you could take, stenography and typing. You could become a teacher or you could become a nurse. And that really was pretty much what was offered to you. So I went to nursing school, and I loved it. And I loved being a nurturer and a problem solver, and that's really where my heart is at. Then I went on to law school, and I went to law school at the age of 40 after I had my 6 kids. So that to me is the American dream. That embodies the American dream. And then to be a member of the United States Congress, only in America. That is really what we're in the fight for right now at this crossroads in our nation's history. It's to preserve this American dream. And I, like so many others in my freshman class, came here because we saw the American dream being eroded. The failed policies of this Democratic administration, the flawed programs put in place, we saw this American dream being eroded and weakened and in its fragile state. So we stepped up, and that's why I ran, just as my introduction, because I wanted my kids and my grandkids, and I'm soon going to have 12 grandchildren, I wanted them to have the American dream. I wanted that to be available to them, to regardless of what they were told they could do, that they could do anything, because this is the United States of America. I haven't had a lot of time for reflection since I've been in Congress, to be honest with you. I'm on 3 committees and 7 subcommittees, and so I am very busy. But the one thing, and I want to talk about this with you today, that keeps coming back to me is what is the role of the conservative woman? And what should it be with regards to 2012, but in general? And I don't just mean for myself or for other members of Congress. I mean for all of us. What should our role be in society? What should our role be out in the community, in our schools, in our churches, and most importantly, within the Republican Party? And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. The one thing that really jumps out at me, and I'll make some illustrations about this, since I've been in Congress, is how extremely unified the Democratic women are regarding one issue. They, and I should read my notes because they forgive as long as you are pro-abortion. That transcends every other issue. And so they remain so united. And it's what we don't do on our side. If you look back at the continuing resolution debate, and this is so important because it was so telling. Back in the continuing resolution debate, the Democratic members of Congress were willing to shut down this government and defund the military, men and women overseas. They were willing to defund them, all for the preservation and protection of Planned Parenthood funding. The Democrats in the Congress and the White House drew the line in the sand over funding for Planned Parenthood. That's astounding. That's astounding, and it's so telling. But they're able to unify over this one issue, and it transcends any other issue. It really does. It doesn't matter how you feel about any other issue. As long as you are pro-abortion and you push that ideology, you belong to this group. And that's what we as conservative women do not do. We don't do a good job at it, and we have to change. During my campaign, and I always thought this was so telling, there was a small group of women out picketing outside of my campaign office, and they had their NOW signs. And I thought to myself, here I am, age 59, running for Congress. I'd be the first woman to ever hold the seat. I'm a nurse. I'm an attorney. I have 6 children. It's like, what else do you want? This is the American dream for women. But I spent from 1977 to 1991 before I went to law school in the pro-life movement. And so that's what they were protesting. And that's so important to understand, that it isn't about women's rights. It's about maintaining and pushing this pro-abortion philosophy. But I just remember looking out there and thinking, really? This is women's rights. This is what we talk about when we say women can do it, and they're breaking through ceilings. And yet, because I am not pro-abortion, they were picketing my office. I thought it was pretty interesting. But the interesting part is I don't believe that most American women are like those women picketing. I really don't. I think that most women are looking for a place to go, and it's not necessarily about abortion. So I think that if I want to talk to you about this today, how we're going to take back the White House in 2012, you and I, what we must do is we must reach the hearts and minds of women, one at a time. And I think the disadvantage we have is that women are out there, they're busy, they're living their lives, they're raising their families, they're working, and they're giving back to their community, they're doing volunteer work. They're not watching floor speeches on C-SPAN, and they're not reading National Review. And it's not because they're not interested. It's because I know I raised 6 kids. You don't have the time. Your perspective is different. So somehow we've got to get to those women. We have to send a message that the conservative women's movement really is about. It's a good place for them to go. But what we don't do, what the Democrats do, is we don't make people feel welcome. We, rather than taking the single issue that the Democrats do and embracing, what we do is we look and we pick apart, well, she doesn't believe in free trade, so write her off. She doesn't believe in, and so we pick and choose our issues. And rather than coming together, we isolate. And we're losing because we're doing it that way. So the key to changing the minds and hearts of women is really in talking to and persuading women, our sisters, our mothers, the people we work with, the people in church, one person at a time, and relate to them that the higher prices in the gas lines, or the fewer choices in their doctor's office, or fewer choices in the marketplace, those are related to liberalism. We've got to take their lives and the context of their lives, and we've got to relate it to liberal policies and how they're destroying this nation. And certainly with this health care bill unfolding, that's a perfect place to illustrate what's happening, whether it's Medicare or whether it's a hospital or whether it's your own private physician. It's a great way for us to relate to. This is what liberal policies lead to. And so we have to do a better job, because we're not doing it now, relating to women in their daily lives as to how liberal policies are really destroying this nation. Now for the hard part. How are we going to do this? It's not easy. We oftentimes, and I consider myself right in the middle of this, we marginalize and we belittle people who don't agree with us. And that we're not going to be successful, and we're not going to reach out, and we're not going to give women and conservative women a place to go if that's the tack we take. And I use Sarah Palin as a perfect example, and it's not a discussion about Sarah Palin, but to her credit, she's out there and she's espousing conservative politics. Now, if you listen to Rush Limbaugh, he spent one whole program talking about why conservative women don't like Sarah Palin. And if you think about that, in this day and age, with all that's going on, with the issues that this country is facing, that's what he's talking about. We're wasting our time on trivial issues. And it isn't really about Sarah Palin. It is so much as we're espousing what her conservative values. And rather than embracing her and saying, yeah, those are good things she's doing, she's marginalized. And it really isn't whether you're for or you like her or not. It's just this issue that we as conservative women have. I think what happens is we have our own stereotypical orthodoxy. And unlike the Democrat women and the liberal women, they unify around abortion. And for them, it really doesn't matter what you feel about any other issue. That's the seminal issue. We marginalize. We separate out. So it's not easy for us to be unified. It really isn't. And some of us are pro-life, some of us aren't. Some of us are pro-choice, some of us are libertarians, some of us are neocons. And so because of this ideological diversity, we fail to unite. And we've got to do better at that. What we do is we major on the minors rather than looking for the places that we can embrace and we can include. A conservative female politician should look a certain way. She should sound a certain way. She should have the right connections. She should have the right experiences. And if she doesn't, we tend to marginalize her. We make no attempt to look for the common ground. And until and unless we do look for the common ground, we're really not going to. We're not going to win 2012. We're not going to get to the most important block of voters, and that's the women. We've got to stop acting like conservatism is a club. We've got to open it up to anyone who wants to be there and be a part of it. Our goals as conservative women and conservative men should be to expand the club, to grow our ranks, to find the common ground, because until and unless we do, we're not going to get back to the White House in 2012, and worse than that, we're going to lose the United States of America. That's what's underneath all of this, the importance of preserving and protecting the United States of America and getting back to the principles that made this country the greatest nation in the history of mankind. So how are we going to expand this club? How are we going to get women to understand that there is a safe haven in the Republican Party and in the conservative movement? It's not the Democratic Party that represents I believe, for the most part, that represents women's. But what the Democratic Party does, which is so frightening, is they are perceived as the party that really cares about women. And that's really kind of what got me into all of paying attention to this closer, because when we went through the health care debate and to funding Planned Parenthood, woman after woman on the Democratic side stood up and talked about women's health and what it means to them. And I thought to myself, that is just so deceptive to have the Democratic Party be the party that cares. So we've got to be the party that really cares about women, and we've got to be the party that embraces women. We've got to stop acting like our conservative political actions have to be gender neutral. Women conservatives, and I think about this a lot because we are in a body that's really not controlled, but the majority of members are men. We're not conservative men in drag. We are conservative Republican women. So it's very important. And sometimes in your effort to become part of the Good Old Boys Network, you say, well, I have to act this way, I have to act this way, or say this or be this way. We have got to, and I say we because I mean everyone in this audience, we are not the Republican men. We are the Republican conservative women, and we need to be proud of that. And to that discussion, we have to bring our traits that make us and distinguish us as women. Women are good relationship builders. That's something that we are, it really is something we're capable of and we embrace. And that's what we need to do. We need to go out and talk to our neighbors, our sisters, our mothers, one by one, and begin to build relationships and to take all of these liberal policies and relate them to their daily lives and show them that this is not the right way to go, and to look hard for the common ground. Look hard as you're talking to somebody, rather than writing them off as a liberal and, oh, they'll never see things my way. Look hard to find the common ground. When I had one of my first town hall meetings when I was in the district, when I first got elected, and it was one of the most contentious town hall meetings. We had over 400 people. And at the end of it, a woman came up to me, and she was angry. She was, just that angry look on her face. And she said, I'll never agree with you on anything. And she said, but I want to talk to you about the Patriot Act. And she was a member of the ACLU. And I said to her, fine, I'd love to talk to you about it. So after the town hall, I sent her a note. I called her up. We set up a meeting in the district office. When it came time to vote on the Patriot Act, I called her up and asked her advice. Now this woman, and make no mistake, we still don't agree on, she doesn't believe in what I believe in, and I disagree with her. But on this one issue, we've established a relationship. And that's what we have to do, so that now when in our district there's going to be a protest or there's going to be an upset at one of the town hall meetings, this woman actually calls our office and gives us a heads up. That's what we've got to do. We as women have got to build relationships. We've got to find the common ground. We've got to let other women know that the Republican Party and the Conservative Party in New York, they have such a stereotype to overcome because the perception is we don't care. We're mean, and all we want to do is cut. We don't care about the environment. We don't care about the old folks. We just don't care. All we care about is money. And that's the perception we've got to overcome. And I think that women are in the best position to do that because of the nature of who we are. And we need to use our traits. And when I say our traits, I don't mean our physical traits. I don't mean anything sexual. I mean the intrinsic values in us that distinguish us from men. We have a role to play, and we can do this. We can make the difference in the election in 2012 if we begin to reach out and we begin to embrace other women to help them see that conservative policies are what will save this nation. Conservative values are what this country was founded on, and that's really what we have to emphasize to them. I skipped over a paragraph, and it has to do with messaging. And so much of what the Republican Party talks about are jobs, jobs, jobs. And you hear that all the time. Well, if you talk to a young mom who's got little kids, and you talk to her about unemployment numbers, or you talk to her about the economy, her eyes sort of glaze over because that's not her perspective. That's not what she's interested in. That's not what she's concerned with. She's concerned with a lot more basic issues. But again, it's up to us to relate how these conservative principles will enhance and help their lives, and certainly the opportunities that will be available to them and to their kids. So, I think in closing, what we need to work on is our communication skills. We really need to work on finding the common ground and working towards embracing and not really cutting off or excluding women who don't agree with us. We've got to find common ground, we've got to work together, and we've got to do what we can do to give women a place to come. Because I don't believe most women in this country are liberal Democrats. But for years, the Democratic Party has created this perception that they care about women, and that's a safe place for them to go. I think that we can do it. I think that we must act now, though. The time for us to act is now. The audience we must reach are women, and our message to them should be that we want to share these conservative principles with you because we believe it is what's going to save the United States of America. And it is what's right for this country, it's what's right for our kids and our grandkids. So that's our mission, and I hope you'll join me in beginning to work on, and all of you are here because of what you believe in and your values, and begin to communicate them. And it's one at a time, and it's a conversation in a grocery line. It's a friend, a family member, your mother, your sister, and begin to explain how liberal policies are eroding the very fabric of this country, and we have a better way. And that way is that the power and the opportunity is with each and every individual in this country. It's not the government who can turn this economy around, it's individuals, and we've got to communicate that over and over again. Before I would like to ask all of you to just say a prayer for and always be cognizant of and aware of our men and women who serve this country in the military. We have this wonderful opportunity to be here together, to speak, to talk about issues, and it's because of their service and their sacrifice. To the veterans, and I don't know if we have any veterans in this room, thank you for your service, and to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. The United States of America is worth fighting for. It is the grandest nation in the history of mankind. It is because of the service and the sacrifice of our military, and it's because of folks like you who understand and appreciate the greatness of this country and who are willing to work hard and fight for the principles that make this country great. So it's wonderful to be here with you today. It's great to meet all of you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Wasn't that excellent? A reminder to focus on the common ground before you go for the conversion. And there always is common ground among women, younger and older. And I think some of the young women here are activists on their campuses, and you do that sort of naturally, don't you? Even with the girls in your dorm and that kind of thing, you find the common ground and you have the friendships. But it's like we forget that when we get older sometimes. But the Congresswoman has a couple of minutes for questions. Maybe let me ask the first one if I can. We have a wonderful audience here. We're thrilled to have some gentlemen as well. Our folks at Clare, Boothe, Luce is primarily young women in college. And when they see somebody like you, they just say, oh, gee, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, you talked a little bit about your life. And would you tell a little bit about how you got to be a Congresswoman, and especially talk about your election, which was really interesting.
Thank you. And the piece of advice I would give everyone in this room is that, number one, you live in the greatest country in the history of mankind. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Be proud of the excellence of the United States of America. Number two, you can do whatever it is you set your heart out and set your mind out to do. Again, don't ever limit yourself because of something that someone said to you. If you are willing to work hard and focus on a goal, you can achieve it. And there are people around you who will help you achieve it. So if you don't remember anything else about today, that's those two things you should remember. My election was, and I had this in my speech. I should probably learn to read my speech more. My election, when I decided I was going to run, I ran against an incumbent. And when I said I was going to run, they said to me, the New York Times gave me a 5% chance of winning. And we were just the dark horse. And we were outspent almost 5-1. We worked hard. And everything you do, it just takes hard work and focus. But the right people came along at the right time during the campaign, and I really think it really was, I prayed about it, and I said, if you want me to do this, God, you have to open doors, because it seemed to be an insurmountable task to run for Congress. And every door that I needed opened was opened. As I said, we were outspent 5-1. We were in a D+3 district. We were off everyone's radar screen. But we ran a grassroots campaign that included the people, and that's what part of my message was to you today. It's about people. It's not about big policies and esoteric issues. It's about people, and it's about how the government affects their lives, and it's how we can make this country a better place. So we just really ran a tremendous grassroots campaign and just worked hard. Worked for 1 year. I gave up my job. I was an assistant attorney general. I had to leave that job, and for 1 year, from January 19th to the election, we worked hard, and we won the election by 648 votes. And it was all in the absentee ballots that the whole election hung in the absentee ballots, so God bless our military. It was considered the upset in the United States. It was one of the biggest upsets. So it's not the money, it's the message. It's not it's so important to remember that. You are espousing, all of you, basic principles that made this country great. It's what this country was founded on. They're the right principles. It's not about Democratic or Republican. It's about America. It's about American issues. And making over and over again, communicate that message. That these are the things you believe in are the right policies for this country. It's how this country will thrive. Sorry.
We have 2 microphones. This is one of our interns, Amanda, who goes to Mizzou, where she's a leader on campus, and Maggie here from New Jersey, Rowan University. So if you would call on people, and if you would identify yourself, wait for the mic so that it gets onto the tape.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Laura Wegman, and I'm a senior at Hillsdale College, and I'm here interning at the Susan B. Anthony list. So I just want to thank you so much for your courage to stand up for the pro-life movement, and we appreciate everything that you're doing that you did to defund Planned Parenthood. We know that's an ongoing fight. You mentioned the lack of unity among pro-life women in Congress and in the Senate. Is there any effort currently to have a sort of a first responders to counteract this Democratic lie that this is a war on women? Have the pro-life Congresswomen united at all in a press conference, or is there anything in the works of that nature?
We, during that period of time when we were voting on the continuing resolution and the issue of defunding Planned Parenthood was right on the radar screen, we did have some press conferences. We did have the Docs Caucus yesterday had a press conference, and when we do special orders, the Republican women did a special orders this Tuesday night, and we all got up and spoke about being conservative Republican women and what that means. So it's kind of it's ongoing. The problem with, and it will be, there's a pro-life caucus. The problem is education, but the Republican Party, really doesn't do a good job messaging. We have got to get better at that. The party as a whole has got to be, we really do care about people, but we believe that the best thing we can do for people is offer them an opportunity, not just to give them a handout. That helping them, give them a hand up instead of a handout, those are Republican principles. But somehow we've got to parlay that, because I talked about it in my speech, we're stereotyped into looking like we don't care about people. And one by one we've got to change that. We've got to change that image. So.
Here, Maggie.
Well, I'm from Heritage. My name's Justine. I'm an intern here. My question is, I think there's sort of a divide, especially I'm Catholic, between Democratic and Republican Catholics, because many think that entitlements are necessary, especially for the poor, because Jesus said to take care of the poor. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that as sort of a short-term solution, and one that women are very concerned about. Thank you very much, and that's a great question. You all heard about handouts and entitlements, and that is the Catholic Church and other churches as well. Like you said, as Jesus said, feed the hungry. Last week, we had a hearing in Oversight and Government Reform, one of the subcommittees, and the hearing was about the welfare programs in this country. And they talked about food, and they talked about housing for the homeless, and welfare in general, the WIC program. And the GAO did a report, and the GAO said, we don't know how many programs we have in this country. We don't know how much this country is spending on those welfare programs. And worst of all, we don't know what the outcome is. We don't know how successful these programs are. And so we end up spending so much in the administration of these programs, we've lost sight of it. And I think the important message is we all in this room understand people fall on hard times. And not the government, but society has an obligation to help them out. That's really, we as human beings have a responsibility to help someone in need out. But the way the government has grown and this whole entitlement mentality has become, it actually hurts people. It keeps them down. Why should someone go to work? It discourages productivity because it rewards. I might as well stay home. I might as well have another child because the way this program is set up. It doesn't encourage people to be self-reliant. I talked about my grandparents, and this I often think about this. They came over here in the early 1900s. For them to take one nickel from the government would have been absolutely a sign of failure, that the American dream didn't work. In 2 generations, we've gone from that to believing that it's the government's role to provide everything. And that's what this administration is pushing: health care, shelter, food. Now, it's not to say there aren't legitimate times and opportunities and needs, but there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance, and the balance is we want people to be a part of the American dream. We want them to have access to the American dream. We don't want to hold them down. And I think the system as it stands right now encourages people, and to that person's detriment, because they don't avail themselves of the opportunities that are out there. So it's a tough message. And next week I actually have a meeting with a very prominent archbishop, and I intend to bring this study into him to say we've gone overboard. We've gone overboard. We got to get back to providing what's needed when it's needed, but not to really enable. Can we do a couple more? You have time for? Oh, sure. Over here.
Hi, Allison Miller with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for your speech, Congresswoman. I had a question regarding you talking about kind of expanding the club, as you called it, and I agree that we do need to foster better relationships and not talk with each other, not at each other. But I wanted you to speak to how do you expand the club, as you said, without compromising your principles. It seems like kind of a hard balance, because there are certain things where we just say, this is not okay, and so if someone espouses a belief that's contrary to that, well, we don't want to cast them out. How do you expand the club without compromising your principles?
And that always is the challenge. But there can't be compromise when it comes to principles. At one of my town hall meetings, someone asked me about, well, you want to defund Planned Parenthood, and so I'm opposed to that. So how do I think that you're representing me? We disagree on that. And I said to her, well, I've been pro-life all my life. I've been involved in the Right to Life movement. Now, for me to go to Washington and vote not to defund Planned Parenthood, it's what kind of a politician would I be? I don't represent anybody anymore. I've lost my principle. And so, but I think there's enough other areas. There's enough other areas that we can we can reach people. And even, I have good friends that are pro-abortion. I can't understand why. Maybe a couple of them haven't had children. Maybe that's part of it. But they just think, well, it's a woman's right to choose. But let's find the 10 other areas we might agree on and set that issue aside. But we're too divisive. And I have to say, I've learned this over time. When I was involved in the Right to Life movement, it was black or white. It was absolutely black or white. And the abortion issue still is black or white. But you also have to look at somebody, and I do this all the time because at some of the town hall meetings, some of the people who come in and they infiltrate us, the Organizing for America sends a group of people to every one of our town hall meetings to try to get things riled up. And I've looked, I now, this is how I think. I look at someone and I say, you are a human being and I am a human being. So we have that much in common. And that's what I say to myself, because you think, how could that person think like that? I mean, what are you thinking? And that's where I start now. And then I kind of inch my way, okay, well, we can agree I'm on the Veterans Committee. That's a great, we all understand we need to do what's right for our veterans and for our military. And then I've done an awful lot of work with abused women, so that's another thing we share in common. And you kind of inch your way over, and I think the biggest message is we can't disagree on everything, and we can't let one issue just make us, I'm not going to try. It's hard. It's hard because it's easier to say, I can't find any way to relate to that person. But if we're going to get to women and get to the independents and get to that middle, you've always got this and this, but there's an awful lot of people in the middle. And we Republicans, we conservatives, we've got to work to get the only thing is, this is a better choice for this country. That really is the bottom line when you try to get to that middle group. Believe me, this is a better choice. We've tried this other, we're $14 trillion in debt. The stimulus, our unemployment's still over 9.1%. It isn't working. So we've got a better way and try to find the common ground.
Okay, last question. Over on this side maybe, or there's one here.
Hello, my name is Kelly Maggio. I'm going to be a senior at the Virginia Military Institute, so thank you so much. I have some friends who are overseas, as it is, for your military support. My question was that concerning the potential bipartisan communication. Like, I know you were talking about strengthening the unity between among conservative women, but I mean, as you said, it's no longer just black and white. There are also Democrats who are pro-life. Is it possible to maybe establish relations with them over that issue, and from there further dialogue onto other things?
That's an excellent question, and I think there are some issues, and there are pro-life Democrats. There are Democrats who thought we should defund Planned Parenthood. There are Democrats who think we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling until and unless there's good reforms in place and we cut spending. There are Democrats who understand that we can't continue on this course. We're going to lose this country if we continue on the path that we're on. So we do work with them. I think, unfortunately, and it's part of having this civilized discourse, especially when I'm in a town hall meeting or you're talking with someone who might be an independent or a Democrat, that we've got to get the partisanship out of it as much as we can. And really, when you talk about the economy and jobs and the American dream, and I say this all the time in my town halls, this isn't a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is an American issue. And we are Americans, and we want to preserve and protect this country. Obviously we all come at it from different perspectives, but I think part of the discourse, it's got to be civilized. It's got to be an understanding that we're not going to compromise our principles, but we want to relate to other people. And it's on the Democratic Party, but there's an awful lot of people in between, women, independents, who are looking for a place to go because they look over here at the Democratic Party and the Democratic policies, and they say, it's really not working. Right now, everyone has this uneasy feeling in our country. What's working? Our foreign policy? the fact that we're over in Libya without congressional discussion or approval, our unemployment, our economy, our health care bill. It's every day we find out something new about health care. So the American people are sensing that things just aren't right. And it's up to you and me and all of us to articulate that all of those kind of bad feelings that nothing's really going right is because of policies. It's because of liberal policies. And the right way to go is back to our core principles. It's nothing that we've come up with. It's what our founding fathers believed in and what founded this country on, those core principles. And so it's up to us to keep articulating that over and over again. These principles work. Ronald Reagan, these principles work. Cut taxes, cut government spending, give power back to individuals, to small business owners, to the it's the private sector. Let's empower them. Those kinds of things. That's the message we have to give over and over again, and give people who have that uneasy sense a place to go. And I think that's what our role's got to be. And that was another thing in my speech I didn't read about Ronald Reagan. He was a perfect example about the civil discourse and how he never deterred or steered from his principles, but he did it in a kind way. He did it in a humorous way. He did it, and this is what I do in my town halls. It's the message to the people is, and what I want them to think is, I don't agree with her on 10 out of 11 issues, but she's a nice lady. She's listening. She cares about me. And that's part of how we make progress. So with that, it's been a great opportunity to be here, and I wish all of you the best of luck, all of you in college. Good luck. You are all in wonderful positions to learn and to understand the greatness of this nation. Thanks so much. We have some gifts for you.